Hey everyone, welcome back to Notes to Self. My name is Melanie.
And I'm Cory.
And if you don't know who we were both born and raised in the AUB, or the Apostolic United Brethren, which is a polygamous cult here in Utah. I was raised with 4 moms and 34 brothers and sisters.
My dad had 9 wives and 39 of us little rugrats running around in a compound or a united order up in Pinesdale, Montana.
And I was raised here in Utah, in the city, in the suburbs.
Yep.
So we wanted to remind everybody, if you haven't started doing your healing work, now's a great time to do it, because you deserve to be loved deeper, and your family deserves to be loved deeper. So if you are a human with a human body, you have had trauma. So any healing modality that you can find that works for you, we really strongly encourage you to get started on that. So today we wanted to talk about polygamist marriages and sanctified marriages, romanticized, sexualized marriages. What do they look like? What are polygamous marriages in the AUB specifically supposed to look like? Go ahead.
And can they all be within a polygamist marriage? How does that happen? Do they have to all be equal? Just tons of questions that we've been asking each other and ourselves. So.
Yeah. So we're just going to kind of even go back and forth and just talk about what we think, how we were taught. One of the things that we were taught, which we have gone over in a lot of our videos, is that polygamous marriages are sanctified marriages. Yep. They are ones that, a sanctified.
They're considered sanctified marriages.
Yes, exactly. Their unions are considered sanctified. One of the explanations dictionary, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh. The definition of sanctified is a holy union blessed by a church. And so that is why these relationships are considered sanctified. It's typically a ceremonial union, which is what happens when you go through the temple or you go through the endowment house. Now, the Polygamist AUB has a temple that is very similar to the LDS Mormon Church, which is has their own temple and their own temple ceremony. One of the things is temples are sanctified for the use for are sanctified for God's use. And so our bodies are meant to be sanctified and consecrated for God's use. So that is one of the reasons why we have garments that we wear, that I used to wear, all the way up to your neck, all the way down to your arms, all the way down to your ankles, because your body is sanctified for the use of God's.
Considered a temple. We were raised that our bodies were temples, and we were to keep them clean, keep them pure, and be righteous human beings to overcome our carnal desires.
Right.
So,
right.
And going through the temple is basically showing you how to keep yourself clean and pure and covered.
Yep.
So,
and how to keep those marriages. So in polygamy, when you have these sanctified marriages and everyone goes into this on the same page, they all go into it with the same belief system. They all go into it with, these are holy unions that were meant to do God's work. And a lot of the God's work is to raise righteous children. Yep. And so that is one of the reasons why your polygamous people have so many children. That is one of the biggest callings that they believe in God. And so they do these religious ceremonies and sanctified marriages to bring up a righteous seed or a righteous posterity, righteous family, and everyone is supposed to be on that same page. Yeah. So
they're given rules to follow, that they should each follow by the way that they read them and believe them.
Yeah.
But these rules are set down to teach them to overcome carnal desires and to raise up a righteous family, and to only have sex, I think, for
intimacy.
Or intimacy.
Don't want to get our video banned.
Yeah. Only have intimacy for the production of righteous children.
Right.
If you have sexual desires, if you covet and are sorry.
Lustful desires.
Yeah, lustful desires, those are going to transfer into the children that you have, and you won't have a righteous seed.
And we've talked about this on a lot of our videos where people say, you know, why? Because one of the prophets of the AUB 2 prophets ago was very strict about you only have intimacy to procreate. If you are not procreating, then you're not intimate with each other. And so that is one of the explanations. A lot of people feel like this is why these men go get younger and younger wives. And
put the older wives out to pasture. Yeah, where they are not doing any sexual acts with them. And so, yeah, eventually the romance dies within those marriages. So,
yeah. And so a lot of times what happens is you know, you'll see a man go to get a younger wife that can still be of childbearing age. And then that way he's still getting his needs met, but within the guidelines of the sanctified unions of all of that they've all agreed to. So one of the things, sorry, I'm pulling up this definition here. One of the things is to sanctify something means to make it pure and holy. And that really is the goal. In one of our videos, I talked about my ex-husband and we went through the temple, and you were supposed to wear your garments during intimacy, because that is, I know it cracks Cory up every time, but that is part of how you keep your marriage sanctified, and you keep your marriage holy and for the purpose of God's work. And then a lot of times you would pray together before you were intimate, so there was a lot of ritualistic things that we would do in order to keep that relationship as holy as possible. Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of times, like in my situation, I was doing all of these things. So you'll see a lot of the women do a lot of these things, but the men are out there doing other things on the side because they still have carnal desires. They still have physical desires that they want met. But for women, they're tired. They get exhausted. They don't have the energy to do everything. Most of them are single moms, basically, because they're raising all of these children on their own while this man is out skirting around at each house. And I know, right?
Keeping righteous relationships with his other wives that do want to procreate still. So,
yeah. So go ahead.
No, I just want to do a clarification. Yes, she said 3 prophets ago they were staying out of the room, but other newer prophets, so it depends on who is in charge. Some of the newer prophets have basically said, stay out of people's rooms. They get to decide and choose. So it depends on who the prophet is and who the current teaching is, but they all refer back to the teachings of prophet 20 times ago. So
my dad's the current prophet, and his stance has always been it's nobody's business what happens in the bedroom. But a lot of the prophets do like to get involved, because what happens, like we're seeing on Sister Wives right now, what happens when somebody sexualizes a relationship or romanticizes the relationship? Now, when you sexualize a relationship in plural marriage or polygamy, that can cause a lot of problems in so many different ways. So on the hit series Sister Wives, when they're talking about it, they'll say, you know, Robin came in and she had all of her... Go ahead.
She definitely sexualized in the pictures previous. And so here the other wives have all chosen or believe together that they don't discuss what goes on in the bedroom.
They don't kiss each other. They're not physically affectionate in front of each other.
So, and then she's bringing a new way in, which might be fine. I've never lived polygamy, so is that possible? We're watching a show that shows that it eventually deteriorates the other marriages that are considered
sanctified marriages,
sacred marriages.
Yeah. So Robin comes into this family, and even her engagement photos are sexualized. She's leaning up against Cody on this car with the silhouette of their bodies. Now, what would have happened if they had not ended up getting married?
Yeah.
And she has these pictures now. She's got, and this happens a lot where a couple will get together and then they'll get all the way down to the night before the wedding and then someone calls it off.
Yep.
And now she's got these sexualized pictures of her and someone else's husband who has 3 other sanctified marriages, and which is why the Browns worked. That's why those 3 marriages worked. Yes, they struggled. Yes, they had problems. Yes, there was people leaving and coming back. That's always going to happen in every marriage. But in polygamous marriages, that's why the original 3 wives worked so well, is because they believed that they were doing God's work and God's purpose, and they were raising a family together. So everyone had a common goal and a common, that was the most important thing. It wasn't their individual relationships with Cody. It was their family.
Yeah.
And because we were all taught this growing up, we were taught to sanctify our marriages right out of the gate, that there was no sexualization of them. So half the women, in my experience, a lot of the women will go into this and that's what they believe and they follow that wholeheartedly. And then you've got other women who will come into that and say, absolutely not. I want a sexualized relationship. I want to feel all of the feelings with my husband, and I don't care if you know about that. Now, we were kind of going over some examples of people that we knew who have done this in their relationships. And I can't think of one relationship that has stayed together when someone has within the AUB, when they have come in and tried to sexualize their relationship. And we know of people that this has happened with. Go ahead.
Well, especially since it's coming out that they were talking about elevating the other marriages up to her, sexualizing the other marriages up to your level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. Kind of probably the feedback that they're getting is, yeah, nobody wanted your marriage. So, well,
in the preview, so the TLC just put out a preview for the upcoming Sister Wives episode. And in there, Robin was saying that Cody was trying to elevate all of the other wives' relationships up to what he believed his and Robin's relationship was like. And the other wives are like, yeah, I don't want that. I don't want to be Robin. I want to be my own person.
Well, sorry.
No, go.
Because they're coming from a point that they felt like that their marriages were more sanctified marriages, and what she had created was something different. But Robin and Cody probably feel like, no, ours is a sanctified marriage. Ours is the everything marriage. It's got the sanctified. It's
by
also
the church,
got by the church. It's also got romance attached to it, and it's got plenty of sexualization.
Well, and I think he said on the interview, deep spiritual level of intimacy.
Yeah.
And so, but in polygamy, when you have either one of these kind of relationships, you can romanticize that relationship. Mm-hmm. And so we were talking about, how do you romanticize a spiritual relationship? And we know a lot of people who have done this. Yeah. In the afterlife, it's going to
be perfect.
I'm going to have my planet. I'm going to have my kingdom. I'm going to have my family that lives with me. And so you romanticize this dream and you make it sound more grandiose than it actually is. Mm-hmm. And then also same with sexualizing any kind of relationship. You can sexualize a relationship and then romanticize that. Look how wonderful our marriage is. How many people, when you have to constantly go over and over and over about how wonderful your relationship is, it's probably not that wonderful. And you're trying to convince other people more than when you have to sit there and tell somebody how amazing you are all the time. There might be some maybe, where you're over romanticizing. So if you look up the word romanticizing, it says to make romantic or treat as idolized or heroic. And so when I listen to that, how many times have you seen somebody go, oh my gosh, our relationship's so great, or their relationship coaches and they don't even live together? So how do you have that kind of relationship when you're over romanticizing something? And we do this with celebrities. We do this is in our culture today. This is very, very common in so many different ways. We over romanticize politics. We over romanticize, celebrities. We over romanticize relationships. Look how many romance movies and stuff are out there. The chick flicks, what are they called? Rom-coms type things. And how many times does that happen? So this is another reason why in the AUB, you are taught very strictly to stay away from TV, to stay away from the media, because they don't want you seeing these over romanticized or sensationalized relationships and then come back to yours and say, wait, what's wrong with mine? Why don't I have that same thing?
Because all relationships need work.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. A good relationship constantly is communication and work and hanging in there through the hard times. So.
Right. Well, and another definition says to talk about something in a way that makes it sound better than it really is, so that you can believe in that. So in polygamy, unfortunately, if you have a wife who comes in and wants to overly sexualize her relationship and she's out there romanticizing this, you are going to have, your family's going to struggle.
There's going to be jealousy. So,
yeah. And I don't even know if it's jealousy so much, because if you look at sister wives, I don't think, yes, the women are all like, Christine mostly was like, yeah, I want to have that kind of a relationship. Wait a minute. I didn't even know we could have that kind of relationship in polygamy, because polygamy is all about the spiritual aspect of it. It's not about the physical, carnal, physical aspect of having intimacy with your husband or sexualizing your relationship. And so when you have somebody that comes into a relationship like that and they start to sexualize things and they start to romanticize their relationship over your relationship, all of a sudden the spiritual side of it diminishes a little bit. And then they get on national television and they tell everybody about how wonderful this is, and they're over romanticizing this relationship. It feels like it's almost impossible for those other three relationships to survive that. And in the culture that we came from, you don't just go get a divorce. That's not how that works. You don't just get to go in there and say, hey, wait a minute, we're incompatible anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. That's not okay. Yeah. So like Cory said earlier, these men will put these women out to pasture and they're just supposed to accept their fate at that point. And how do you accept that as a woman when you're watching your sister wife romanticize the hell out of her relationship with your husband, and you're over here feeling like, well, wait a second. Yeah.
That I almost think that she was that they are like, we didn't even know this was an option,
right?
That because based on our teachings, based we grew up, it wasn't an option. You weren't given that choice of a marriage, and so, well, wait a minute. If I can have this kind of marriage, that's very romantic and all that stuff, and I don't get that from Cody or from my husband,
right?
Holy crap. Maybe there's somebody out there that I can get this kind of relationship with, and change your whole idea. So you can see the wives, the original wives, changing their belief system from the way we grew up. So,
right. Well, and when you remove religion from this whole dynamic of plural marriages, then you can lose the sanctification of those marriages, because then it becomes about ego. It becomes about human desire. It becomes about the physical earth that we live on. It doesn't become about the spiritual realm you're seeking to get to. And so then now all of a sudden everything becomes temporal instead of eternal. And when you remove that eternal aspect from things, then and a lot of women will stay in these marriages because they've chosen to romanticize the spiritual part of the relationship. And so people say, why would women stay in this? Well, that's why, is because I'm working towards a spiritual goal, even though my husband and his one wife are in this temporal realm. I don't care. I'm working for. And so you get a lot of self-righteousness when that happens. I know a lot of women who are in that category, and they don't see it as self-righteous. They see it as very much they're romanticizing the spiritual part of it. That's what
get at in the afterlife. It'll be all perfect in the afterlife. The other thing that we were discussing too is within the AUB, there's no such thing as a no fault release.
right.
There has to be a violator on one side or the other. And so
Right.
if somebody's, if you will, put out to pasture or no longer, that's something that you shouldn't even complain about within the AUB. That's, I'd no longer want to have children. Great. I should no longer want to have a romantic or a sexualized relationship.
Well, because a lot of times it's not addressed as a romantic relationship.
Mm-mm.
It's not. I don't have a romantic relationship with my husband. I have a mission for God's purpose,
duty, yep.
and a duty and a responsibility. And so they do. I mean, honestly, when I was married to my ex-husband, we were intimate out of responsibility. A lot of times there wasn't a romantic side. I did not have intimacy with him as part of just, oh, I love him. Oh, I want to be intimate with him. I didn't have that. And I've said this in other videos. I wore my garments as a way to protect me from that. Because I wasn't sexualized at all. I mean, who wants to see somebody in long underwear, and there's nothing, there's nothing sexy about that. You're so bad. Now you made me lose my train of thought.
You asked the question. I just answered.
But, and so that's why a lot of these women stay, is because they believe that they're doing something out of a religious sacrifice, a religious, what was the word that I used? Consecration of their bodies to God and to their family. And so you'll see, you see these original wives in Sister Wives. You see Christine. That's where Christine came from. It's why she didn't kiss a married man before she married him. Is that's why she kissed him in the over the altar when she was getting sealed to her husband, is because she believed in the sanctity of the marriages. She believed in a sanctified marriage where this is a holy union and we're creating a holy family, a spiritual family. And I just, especially in today's society, you cannot maintain that kind of dynamic if you take religion and spirituality out of that. Now, I know there's a lot of people, this is going to get naughty for a minute, in sexual relationships who believe that they have spiritual relation when they're intimate with each other. And that's great if you can do both of those. But is that possible to do in polygamy? Is that possible to have this spiritual, sexual experience with one wife, and then you don't have that with the other wives because the intention is different? Yeah. What are you smirking at over there?
Nothing. Nothing. Just go.
Some of the rules in polygamy, I know Cory wrote down the rules, and we'll go over those, and we'll kind of tie these two videos together, because there are rules for this kind of working through your carnal desires and your carnal, sins, if you will, your thoughts, your physical desires, your sexual desires, your mental, emotional desires. You're supposed to work to overcome those in this religion. Your brain is turning. What are you thinking about?
Because if you're in the religious aspect of it, you're supposed to have a prayer and you're doing this ceremony, and it reminds me back of the old days when kings were getting married, and you're inviting in the Lord to watch you. It's more of a duty that you're doing, and it's not going to be very sexy at all.
No. No. There wasn't a whole lot of sexiness about it. It's funny. I had a I had a wedding shower when I got married, and somebody gave me lingerie, and I was mortified. I was so embarrassed because we just didn't do that. We didn't talk about that. And I was 16. I was 16 years old when I had this wedding shower, because I got married a week after I turned 17. And so, so it was very uncomfortable and awkward for somebody to give me lingerie, and it was modest lingerie. It's not like it was, as modest as lingerie can get, that was this lingerie. But my mom's there and my grandma's there. And I'm like, I was so embarrassed. I thought I could fall into the floor. But
all the judgments.
Yeah. Yep.
She'll never use those. So
Right. And so for the
she shouldn't ever want to use those things. So those
Yep.
are carnal desires.
And so that's what's so hard too, especially in these relationships where you get these men who go into it. They say they're going into it for the religious aspect of it, right? They're going into it for the love of wanting to serve God, wanting to serve their church, wanting to create their own, spiritual heaven.
And they might all be doing that at the beginning.
Right.
And that's probably why they were functioning by these rules. No real desire. We're doing it. And they were all kind of raised in the same, studied together, did all the same idea of how to raise a family together in the same house, under the same rules, following all the stuff. And then all of a sudden you invite somebody into the family that doesn't have a purity card, and they can come in and open his eyes.
Last night, what'd you call her? Some vixen.
Yeah, the vixen comes into the marriage, who opens his eyes up, if you will. But I mean, yeah, his judgment now on the other wives of escalating, because she's probably coming in saying, no, this is holy, or this is righteous sexual pleasure. So yeah.
So when she says on this new TLC interview, because we were already going to talk about this for a while, but then you go at the TLC like preview, and we're like, oh my gosh, this fits exactly with what we were going to talk about. And she says, yeah, Cody wanted to elevate each one of those relationships up to what he felt like our relationship was. And they're all like, yeah, that's not what I want, And in Cory's family, you can elaborate on this. With 9 wives, there were some of the wives who were in it for the sanctity of the marriage, for the sanctity of the religion. And then you had 1 or 2 wives that were in it for the sexualization of they were very sexually driven. And what happens when you romanticize that, you've got one wife that's over here. Okay, you got one wife who's over here working her ass off.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They judge each other.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
One's judging like, oh, that is that's not a sanctified, righteous marriage like ours is. And then the other one's judging them with, your husband's not satisfied, so I will do it. So I don't, I'm just being snarky. I've never lived polygamy myself, just watched it from the outside.
But women will find out, wait, he'll do that with you sexually, but he's not doing that with me sexually. What is happening here? Like that's against the rules. Mm-hmm. And so then you've got these resentments and these anger building because he will do certain sexual acts with one woman that he won't do with another woman. And one of the things we just watched season 3 episode, I think it was 6 and 7. And you'll see where you start to get some of the spiritual stuff taken out. And I know this is a long shot, but bear with me. You've got Cody, Mary, and Robin sitting in front of a tent doing their hair and putting on their makeup and doing, getting their self beautified to go camping. Yes, they're filming. So yes, they still need to look pretty. Cody needs to look pretty. The girls need to look pretty. But then you've got Christine and Janelle and their children doing the work. And so this is when a family cannot and will not function in polygamy. When you've got when you've long term, because you've got the families over here that are doing the work. And Chris and Janelle says, go and do the good and right thing. Mm-hmm. And so you've got women who will come into these marriages who want to go and do the good and right thing, and they're in it for the religious aspect of it. And then you've got these other women who are in it for the religious aspect of it too, but they still want the sexualized, romanticized relationship too, that they feel like is so important. And so, especially when you're out bragging and boasting about your relationship all the time, and especially in this situation where they did it on national television, there's no way a relationship can survive, especially in relationship with multiple wives. It's hard enough when how many times have we seen like celebrities over romanticize their relationship and then 2 months later they're broken up, and now they're, but they romanticized the hell out of that relationship while it lasted for 2 months. Look how wonderful it is. What were you going to say?
Just they get the old face, or I don't know, social media BJs.
Right. Oh gosh.
And
we
then,
call it social media BJs. I don't know if we can even say that on this video. Yeah, because you're like, oh, they must be in a fight because somebody's overcompensating for something. And so when you over romanticize or overcompensate or over glorify your relationship, especially in this religion, you've got other people in the background going, and we've heard the sister wives say that, where they're like, I don't want to sit around and watch him have this wonderful relationship while our relationship is hard. And so that is where you'll start to take some of the sanctity of those marriages out. And now you're having the romanticizing of these relationships come in. And this is where you're going to start to see the foundation of the family start to crumble and fall. And a lot of times, unfortunately, most of these men that I have had experiences with don't take accountability for this. And so then they feel done wrong because there is no fault. There's not such thing as a no fault divorce or a no fault release from your eternal obligation, your eternal commitment, your eternal, whatever you want to call it, that you committed to eternally. You can't just walk away from that just because I put you out to pasture. What are you thinking? And so there's a lot of that comes into play. That's why they feel victimized when a wife will no longer tolerate being treated less than the romanticized relationship.
Yep.
What are you going to say?
Well, and this is just, we're kind of giving you our thoughts,
our experiences,
being raised in here. We are obviously outside of the AUB, so we actually support marriages that have sex and romance and all of that stuff in there. Those are healthy, but they don't tend to be healthy and work when you got 4 wives and you're not doing that equally.
Right.
So that you're still using your belief system or your dogma to be able to say, well, this wife's done having kids, so I have no desires. I will have no desires with her. I will have no romance. I will have none of these things. That hurts. I feel like a healthy marriage does have
all these
all
aspects
of these aspects to it. Yep.
Right.
Sex included.
Where you can have the spiritual
pleasure.
side, you can have the sexualized side, you can have the romanticized side of everything. Romanticizing only becomes toxic when it's so over the top that it really invalidates what's actually happening. That's when it becomes toxic. Romanticizing your relationship is not toxic, but when you have to get on national television and explain this to people over and over and over, look how wonderful our relationship. Our children sit there and they pawn over us all the time because our relationship is so wonderful. That's when it becomes toxic, because it's no longer true and it's no longer.
Well, it's because you're so fixated or focused on the beauty and what you have that you're not even acknowledging some of the hiccups that you should be working
right
on.
And it no longer becomes about the spiritual aspect of it. It becomes about the temporal, mortal aspect of it, and you've lost all spirituality and all religion to it, the religious aspect to it.
So I find it interesting that he is still in that this is the most romantic relationship. And now you can kind of see she's pointing out some of the flaws within their marriage. So maybe it's not so romantic for the 4th wife anymore. So
well, and obviously every relationship is going to have their hiccups. Every relationship, and we're not saying that these things are not healthy to have in your relationship. They absolutely are. But in polygamous relationships, does this work? Usually not, and I remember being a teenager. Go ahead.
If somebody knows about one that does, let us know. I haven't seen it, but again, I've seen the one that they put on TV. I've seen the one that I grew up in. So
yeah. And then you see them fall apart. When I was a teenager, I had some of my friends get married, and I had one girl get married in particular, and she was a 3rd wife, and she would come, I would see her and she would over sensationalize, over romanticize, and over sexualize her relationship with her husband as the 3rd wife. She was the first one divorced. that relationship did not last. It did not go anywhere because she over sexualized that relationship in front of her sister wives who had been married to this man for years before she came along. And then she over romanticized by talking about how, all of these inappropriate things in front of people. So when you come into a religion like this, that the marriages are religious and spiritual based, can you add temporal mortal desires and have that relationship stay? We have not seen that successfully yet. Not saying it couldn't happen. We just have not experienced that yet. And then unfortunately, in this religion, the women's needs are never a consideration. The women's emotional, physical, mental, spiritual needs are never, ever in consideration. So the man gets his needs met spiritually, temporally, physically, because if he's not with his woman, in my case, he's out doing pornography, so all of his physical, desires are getting met. And you just really cannot do that when you have a spiritual relation. Now, when you go on national television and you're exposed to all of the worldly things that the world has to offer, and you start to take the religion out of that relationship, is this what happens? I don't know.
And I feel like the men within these realms, their struggles are different than. They don't have to deal with jealousy. They don't have to deal with that stuff. They don't know what that is. So here's a book. Go read this book. This is a problem that you're having.
Go read your scriptures and get yourself right with God, woman.
So you need to be working on these things. And
oh God.
and that's part of some of the teachings of here, that you guide them by pointing them in the right direction, whether that's a book or whether that's a
point out their jealousy flaws or their insecurity flaws.
But it's their job to work on those jealousies. It's not his. He doesn't have jealousy. He doesn't even understand what jealousy is.
Right.
So,
yeah. So when you see a man in this religion, especially because they are the center focal point of the universe, of this family, they're the nuclei of this family. And so they're so used to A, hardly ever being wrong, if ever wrong, B, being elevated and lifted up to this godlike status to their wives and their children. And if they, even to their fellow brethren in the group, in the church, they're elevated because depending on the status of their family. And so they don't like to be told that they're wrong. And when they hit a certain elevated status, ego becomes a huge factor in these people, in these men. And so when one woman is dissatisfied and says, wait a minute, I'm watching the sexualization of this relationship, I want some of that too. And she now becomes disgruntled or dissatisfied. And she goes to the leadership and says, wait a minute, he's having this romantic sexualized relationship with this wife and he's not having that with me. Then now the husband looks like he's, sexually incompetent with her. He's not physically meeting her needs. And then his ego gets involved. And then that's where you start to see the anger and everything is their fault. They need to be accountable. So one of the things that we saw in this little clip preview of Sister Wives coming up is Cody says, I've been accountable. I want to make them be accountable. He wants them to be accountable because Christine made herself become unhappy because she saw Robin and Cody's relationship and that's what she wanted too. And so if she just never wanted that in the first place, then she would have been unhappy. So she needs to be accountable about that. Not the fact that he didn't give that to her or that he didn't step up or that he was stepping out of that relationship. She needs to be accountable. The fact that she saw something that she desired and wanted and it wasn't really made for her. So she just needs to get over that.
Well, she needed to fix some of her fundamental flaws,
right?
Like being a good sister wife, whatever he pointed out that she needed to fix for that relationship to be elevated.
Right.
And so fix these flaws and will allow, it will allow me to love you more. So it'll allow me to love you like I love Robin.
And this is where those lists come in. So if you want to have this elevated relationship like this woman has, here's your list of all the things you need to do. And once you complete those lists, then we'll see about elevating that relationship up. So we just thought, go ahead.
Rule number 3, suppose that your wives are not perfect. Guide them towards perfection. So, yes, that's what he was doing. He was fulfilling his priesthood duty on guiding his wives, what they needed to fix for perfection. And a wife really can't, because his other relationships are, he's perfecting these other relationships. And so she needs to perfect herself. He's working on bigger, better things to lower himself down. She needs to work on those on her own. So, and then there's some rules on what she needs to do to perfect herself as a sister wife and a good wife. So,
and we're going to make a video about all these rules and regulations that you're supposed to follow for the husband and for the wife. And we'll tie these 2 videos together so that you can see how they overlap with each other with these rules.
Yeah. And some of these rules I agree with. I try to do it, but I get caught up on rules. If it's a rule, hey, Cory, you should be doing this to make yourself better and perfect yourself, that is awesome. I really enjoy internally looking into what I can do to make myself better. But then some of these rules are like, this is what you're failing at. You need to go work on that stuff. And
here's a rule for you to follow, Mel.
Yeah, self-healing is so much better to. So some of these rules, I'm like, yeah, no, I could do that better. I'm going to work on that, stuff like that. But yeah.
When you have to make rules for other people that I'm going to make sure you follow these rules. And so when Cody said that,
until you follow these and do them the way that I think they should be done, I can't give affection, love, kindness to you. So heal yourself first.
So when he made that comment, I've taken accountability. I want to make them take accountability. That right there, you can already tell he has not taken accountability about.
No, he's being a good priesthood leader based on his rules. So he's making them be accountable for their actions.
It's true. It is his responsibility. And that's his
responsibility as a priesthood holder.
Very much. There's some snark for you guys. We haven't been snarky in a minute. So, but let us know what you guys think. This is what we really wanted to go over, what the differences is in a sanctified marriage versus a sexualized and over-romanticized marriage in polygamy, and what it really does to these polygamous families. And we went over a dozen examples of people that we know personally that have gone through these exact same situations that you're seeing play out on Sister Wives right now. And it's when you have somebody come in there and over-romanticize a relationship, and then you've got other people going, wait a minute, that's not what we based this family on. That wasn't the foundational principle of this family. Go ahead.
We're interested. If anybody out there knows of a sexualized marriage and coexisting within the same polygamous group, and you guys are doing great,
I was just going to say, it has to be a polygamous group, because these are things that can all coexist in a monogamous relationship and have no problem thriving in a healthy monogamous relationship. But when you add the level of polygamy to this, that's where the toxicity starts to come in. And that's where, the hurt and the anguish of these women starts to come in. And then these men become bitter and angry because these women are hurt and anguished, and they take it as a personal defeat, if you will. And so then they become very defensive, very angry, and want to make it everything that woman's fault.
Well, it's a jealousy. It's a jealousy that women have jealousies, are not obviously going to have jealousies within this kind of a relationship, and that's something that they overcome. And we as priesthood holders hold ourselves above that and aren't jealous. Yet you can see him weeping like a I don't know, weeping when he thinks he might be losing Robin there, or that she has so many choices and he is working overtime to win her over into his family. Well, that's a form of jealousy you need to work on there, buddy. What if another man gets her in the family? So So
these are just some of our thoughts that we've been having as this last week as we watched as we've watched a lot of these families kind of fall apart under these circumstances. But let us know what you guys think in the comments below. And again, another reminder, if you haven't started doing your healing work and you have a human body, you have trauma, please, start doing your healing work. Go find whatever modality of healing works for you, so that because you deserve to be loved deeper. Your relationships deserve to be loved deeper. And healing is the first step to getting that going. And I know a lot of people love their families deeply, and they're on a long journey of healing. But we just want to remind everybody that what a wonderful gift to give to yourself and to your family. So hope everybody has a great weekend. Anything else you want to add?
We love you guys. Thank you for following us, giving us advice, all of that stuff. Love you.
Yep.
And we'll see you
on the next one. Thanks.